whenever I was 17 years old, I just graduated high school. And I was in West Monroe there. And I'd had about a 3-year life of what I call just the double life. I was hiding in plain sight. I was, in the youth group. I was in church. The little old ladies loved me. But I was dark. I was living a double life. And I was partying and doing everything on the wrong way and for the wrong reasons. And so that lifestyle eventually catches up with you. And so it came out. And so my dad sat me down and he said, Al, I love you. You know the life I lived. I turned it around. But you can't keep living that way and stay here. You just graduated high school. If you're going to live that way, you can't be here influencing your brothers in a negative way. And it was a tough conversation. I mean, I got daughters, now I got grandkids. For a man to love his son enough to sit down and tell him the truth, that's not hate speech, that's love speech. Yeah. And it meant a lot to me, but not at the time, because I was prideful. And so I went to find myself, and I went to the spiritual oasis of New Orleans, Louisiana to do that. And let me tell you, James, Betty, if you don't go to New Orleans with a game plan, you're going to find trouble. And I did. And so I spun even further downward for another 1.5 years. And I got into a confrontation with a man because I had been fooling around with his wife. So now I'd add adultery to my long list of sins. And that day, he was there to kill me. He didn't, by the grace of God. And but I was beaten, literally, and bruised. And I had an awakening, as Kyle puts it. That was my moment, sitting on a street in Kenner, Louisiana, on the side of a curb. The police came and they left, and there was one officer that stayed after to help me, to fix my tire on my car, because the guy had flattened my tire, and kind of cleaned me up a little bit, and he gave me some great advice. He said, son, you don't look like you belong here. He said, you don't look like you belong here on this city street. And I'm crying that by now, and I said, well, I don't know, my life's a mess. And he asked me about home, and I told him about my family back home. And just like on Duck Dynasty, when you see them gathered around that table, I knew that's what they were doing that day. That was a Sunday. And boy, the tears were flowing. And so that's when I decided that, in my own honest look at myself, that I was in a terrible place. And so he said, you know what you need to do? And I would have jumped off the Huey P. Long Bridge if he'd have told me, because I was that open at that moment. He said, you need to get in that car, and you need to turn in your notice at your job, and you need to go home. And he didn't mean just home to the Robertsons. He meant home to be with the Lord. And he was right. And so I did that. I went home. I was action. And I got in that car, and I went north. And I got there, and I got out, and I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I had not even talked to my dad now in 1.5 years. And so our last conversation was a bad one. And I got out, and Mom came up and hugged me, and she was crying, because her son had come home. And I was crying as well. And Dad, there was a tear or two, but he just was a little stoic, and I thought, oh boy, here we go. And then he just came over and he hugged me. And we're not big huggers, and I don't know how the Robisons are, but the Robertsons aren't big huggers. But he hugged me, and he held me tight. And I was expecting him to say, Al, you did this, you did that, you did. He didn't give me a long list of rules. He did just like that father did in Luke 15. He said, a son has come home. So we killed the fattened catfish, and we had a celebration because a lost son had come home.